whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Welcome back to the show. Back to another week. It's August the 5th. Thank you so much for being with us. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, and it's also where we are building a liberty machine, and we're so glad that you're with us. The telephone number, 870-275-9799, if you would like to contribute to the program. What a devastating weekend for our country. The massive loss of life in El Paso, Texas, and Dayton, Ohio. Absolutely devastating. It made me sick. Made me absolutely sick on Saturday. Saturday I was busy. I was helping family all day Saturday. Hardly got a chance to look at headlines, and when I did, I was just sick. And then to then read, less than 12 hours later, what happened at a bar in Dayton, Ohio. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, it was just too much, man. It really was. And I tell you what else was too much is knowing exactly what's about to happen over the next, news cycle or whatever. I mean, knowing, okay, well, now we have to rush to figure out who these people are, what their political affiliation is, so that we can then blame one political party, and the other political party can take advantage. And I read it. Of course, I was like, well, yeah, they're going to blame the president too. They just got through. Robert Mueller, that's a big goose egg. Trump is racist. Everybody's racist, but Trump is racist. That has fizzled out. And now, okay, well, you know what? Trump's responsible. Not the guy that pulled the trigger, but Trump and guns are responsible. Now you're going to hear all week about the gun lobby and how terrible they are. I'm just sick of it, man. I really am. Absolutely sick of this. Here's the president yesterday, though, with First Lady Melania Trump. We're going to get into this. There's no other, you have no choice. As far as I'm concerned, we have to get the truth out there. We have to get the facts out there, regardless of what happens. Just let the chips fall where they may. What's the truth? Let's start at the top here. A tweet from Ryan Saavedra from the Daily Wire. President Donald Trump yesterday.
And we're going to take care of it. I spoke with Attorney General Bill Barr at length. I spoke to Christopher Wray, director of the FBI, spoke to the governors, both governors, and we're doing a lot of work. A lot of people are working right now, a lot of law enforcement people and others. Spoke to members of Congress about whatever we can do, and a lot of things are being done right now as we speak. I'll be making a statement tomorrow sometime, but just on behalf of our First Lady and myself, condolences to all. We have to get it stopped. This has been going on for years and years in our country. We have to get it stopped. So thank you very much, and I will be making a statement tomorrow at about 10 o'clock, and I'll see you there. Thank you all very much.
All right, so now he's taking a question now. Okay, keep going.
We're talking to a lot of people. And a lot of things are in the works and a lot of good things. And we have done much more than most administrations. And it's not really not talked about very much, but we've done actually a lot. But perhaps more has to be done. But this is also a mental illness problem. If you look at both of these cases, this is mental illness. These are really people that are very, very seriously mentally ill. So a lot of things are happening. A lot of things are happening right now. And I will see you tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Thank you.
Okay, so we will all be obviously looking forward to whatever it is the president has to say. Obviously mental health is a big deal. The issue here, not to mention, I mean, is it still taboo to just talk about the psychotic drugs that many of these mass shooters are on? I mean, that used to be considered a conspiracy theory if you even pointed it out. That, well, the underlying idea is that the psychotic medicine itself may be having these. I mean, I'm telling you, that's why I guess it's conspiratorial, or I don't know how it's conspiratorial. It's just reporting on a drug. Maybe that's what it is. If you're reporting on a drug having an effect that they don't want advertised anyway. The bottom line is this: yeah, mental health, big deal. But I'm just letting you guys know that you can use mental health to get red flag laws, and to argue for red flag laws. More on that in a moment, but I'm just saying, I don't know what the president's going to say, but red flag laws, violating due process is not the answer. I don't see how you can have a red flag law without violating due process. I don't know. I mean, people that claim that you can, I don't, they're wanting to eat their cake and have it. I don't think there's any way to do both. But more on that in a moment. Let's go to report number 2 here. On the El Paso shooter, in his manifesto, if it is real, he claimed to be radicalized before President Donald Trump. And that's not just, this is a Breitbart story, but it's summarizing, scrolling down, the Washington Post reported Sunday, quote, authorities believe the shooter wrote the document, though they are still gathering evidence. The author, quote, stresses that he maintained his white supremacist ideology for many years, predating President Trump and his 2016 campaign, which he says did not influence his reasons for carrying out the attack. That's Washington Post. CNN, quote, the writer wrote that the opinions on immigration predate President Trump, and the writer appears to have held these beliefs for years. Portions of the alleged manifesto were also published at Latino Rebels. In it, the author supported the terrorist in Christchurch, New Zealand, who killed dozens of Muslims earlier this year. Quote, Hispanic invasion of Texas. He also condemned interracial relationships. The author predicted that some people will blame Trump for the attack. He predicted it, but says that would be fake news. Now, this, of course, flies in the face of what all of the Democrats who are running for president are saying, which they're blaming the president for inciting the El Paso shooting. Now, moving north to Dayton, and it's sad that we have to do this, but if you go to the next story, Twitter has now suspended an account that allegedly was linked to the Dayton, Ohio shooter. Flowers for Atomsk, Adamsk. Flowers for Adamsk once tweeted 2016 election in 3 words, this is bad. Twitter suspended an account Sunday evening linked to the gunman who killed 9 and wounded dozens outside a Dayton, Ohio bar early Sunday. He identified as a, quote, leftist, end quote. The suspended account tweeted in support of socialism against the election of President Donald Trump in favor of Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren. Breitbart News obtained several screenshots from the account before it was suspended. He identifies, scrolling down, as a he/him, which that's something that people on the left do, right? They tell you what their pronouns are. Is that correct, Joe? He's an anime fan, a metalhead, a leftist. I'm going to hell and I'm not coming back. That's what he said. Millennials have a message for the Joe Biden generation. Hurry up and die. A picture of Kamala Extract Harris and Elizabeth Warren. Co-presidents. Flowers for that's a different Twitter, but then he responds, but only because Harris is a cop. Warren, I'd happily vote for. Okay, so that's not going to be. Listen, I'm just saying, rush rush to blame. I mean, if we're going to rush and blame the president, then you should have facts to back it up. That's all I'm saying. Here is, let's go to Jake Tapper, CNN. Jake Tapper. Now, this is sick right here. But I want you to, I've got this queued up, Joe. This video is already queued up for you. And you scroll down here and just click play. I want you to hear, here's Jake Tapper questioning the mayor of El Paso, Texas, who's asking for blood donations and prayer. And Jake Tapper, not once, but twice, tries to get the El Paso mayor to blame this on President Donald Trump. Listen.
A lot of people are giving blood, and frankly, we need prayers. We need prayers and support.
Former Congressman from El Paso, Beto O'Rourke, told me earlier this show that in his view, the president's anti-immigrant rhetoric is making things worse and creating an atmosphere of violence. Do you agree? Do you have any concerns about the things the president says about immigrants?
Jake, I'm not qualified to comment on that. I'm not a talking head. I'm focusing on the El Pasoans and the 20 deaths and their families and what it means to this community and how we can come together and not be victimized by this. This will not define us. We are a unique region that's been here for 350 years. There's families on both sides, commerce on both sides. We are binational and bicultural. We're almost 2.5 million people, and our average age is 32. This will not define us.
The Texas Land Commissioner, George P. Bush, said in a statement that, quote, white terrorism is a, quote, real and present threat that we must all denounce and defeat. Do you agree that white terrorism is a threat to the United States?
Jake, I'm not qualified to respond to that any more than the previous question. I'm focusing on El Paso. There's evil in this world, and it's unfortunate.
4 of the 10 deadliest mass shootings in
white terrorism. White terrorism. That's now a thing. White terrorism. Well, how else are they going to frame it? The leftist media is obsessed with race. They have to quantify it. They can't just look at somebody and see a human being. They have to look at somebody as either a white oppressor or a minority, a victim of a white person. That appears, I mean, listen, they can't just look at somebody. I mean, I'm telling you, the Obama administration started this when they started, they were worried about military veterans, and they got the FBI to kind of come up with some guidance about white ex-military or potential, real, got to be very careful. And it's I mean, eventually you're going to be, I mean, if the leftists have their way, if you fly an American flag at your house and you like to barbecue and shoot fireworks on the 4th of July, you're a potential white terrorist, I guess. Oh yeah, you'd have to have, and you're white. Then you're, we need to be careful with this person. That's not really the issue at hand. Speaking of Beto O'Rourke, now Jake Tapper did say something good. Listen to this. Go to the Daily Wire. Beto O'Rourke basically is calling Trump an avowed racist, but Jake Tapper does at least have some. I mean, a little bit. He's got to. He's got to say that this guy was radicalized before President Trump. Listen to this.
So, Congressman, you wrote on Twitter and said publicly in El Paso, President Trump's racism does not just offend our sensibilities, it fundamentally changes the character of this country and it leads to violence. Now, the document that this terrorist in El Paso, that law enforcement is investigating whether or not he actually posted this document, which refers to Latinos coming to the country as an invasion, which, as you noted, is language that we've heard from the President of the United States. It also says, and I know, it's hard to make sense of any of this stuff, but it also says that he had this ideology before President Trump. He kind of anticipated, assuming this document's real, the alleged terrorist anticipated that people would blame President Trump for it and said, I felt this way before President Trump.
I don't know the point that you're trying to make here, Jake, but it's pretty obvious to me and anyone who's listened to the president and will look at the facts that his anti-immigrant rhetoric, not just the things that I cited, but calling asylum seekers animals or an infestation. Now, you might describe a cockroach or termites as an infestation, something less than human. You might hear someone in the Third Reich describe a given people based on their characteristic as an infestation or subhuman. But that's what the President of the United States is doing right now. And it's not just with Mexican immigrants, conflating Congresswoman Ilhan Omar with the terrorists from 9/11.
So, Trump inciting El Paso shooting. When confronted with the alleged shooter's manifesto stating he held racist beliefs prior to Trump's presidency, there's a notable silence before Beto O'Rourke continues blaming the president. We've got a whole week of this to look forward to, ladies and gentlemen. A whole week. One more thing on Beto. He also spouted off this. Listen, quote, "These are white men motivated by the kind of fear this president traffics in. The mosque in Victoria, Texas was burned to the ground on the same day that President Trump signed his order attempting to ban Muslim travel to the United States. When he says after Charlottesville that Klansmen and white supremacists and neo-Nazis are very fine people, the commander-in-chief is sending a very public signal to the rest of this country about what is permissible and, in fact, even what he encourages to happen." So let's connect the dots here on what is happening and why it is happening and who is responsible for this right now. You don't get mass shootings like these. You don't torch mosques. You don't put kids in cages until you have a president who has given people permission to do that. And that's exactly what is happening in the United States of America today. Only one problem. Breitbart News points out President Trump signed his executive order banning travel from 7 terror-prone countries on January 27th, 2017. The mosque was burned on the 28th, the next day, not the same day. Of course, Jake Tapper's not going to correct the record there. By the way, the Trump administration prosecuted the arsonist. The president's executive order did not ban Muslims from traveling to the United States. It focused on terror-prone countries that had been identified by the Obama administration pursuant to congressional statute. Other Muslim countries were not affected, and the order said nothing about religion. The last version of the travel ban executive order, which was upheld by the Supreme Court, included non-Muslim countries such as North Korea and Venezuela. Also, President Trump never said Klansmen and white supremacists and neo-Nazis were very fine people. As Breitbart News and others have repeatedly noted, Trump was describing nonviolent protesters for and against the removal of a Confederate statue as very fine people, and added specifically, quote, "I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and white nationalists because they should be condemned totally." Even Jake Tapper at an earlier time acknowledged that fact. Also, numerous mass shootings occurred during the Obama administration and before, including the murder of 5 police officers in Dallas during a Black Lives Matter march. Few blamed Obama for inciting that attack. There is no policy, by the way, of kids in cages, but the use of chain link fences to separate children from adults at Border Patrol processing facilities, a policy that began under not President Trump, but President Barack Obama. Jake Tapper did not correct any of this. They're just letting the Democrats come on, and I guess it's like, I want to be the next president. I want to be the Democrat nominee. I can demagogue the best. It's a demagoguery contest, really, and the news priests absolve or condemn, support or reject what they want because they have an agenda. We have to take a break. Back in just a moment. Happy Monday. As sad as it is, happy Monday. David Showers, writing about a Fort Smith attorney who has been at the center of the Arkansas Freedom of Information Act battles in West Arkansas, said that clear statutory language could prevent what happened in Garland County earlier this month when a committee of elected officials, court officers, and law enforcement officials met without notice. Joey McCutcheon is that attorney. He joins us now via phone. Joey, how are you this morning?
Morning. Doing good, Paul. How you doing?
I'm doing great. So first of all, tell us about, if people don't know about this Garland County controversy, tell us what happened in Garland County.
Well, and I haven't seen all the documents, but it appears that this committee, this Criminal Justice Advisory Committee, met, which was composed of judges, prosecutors, maybe the prosecuting attorney, the JP met and discussed the closing of the Garland County Jail, and the jail was temporarily closed after the committee met on July 10th. So, the question becomes, is that a government-appointed committee, which would have required notice under the Freedom of Information Act? It's certainly a group of citizens meeting, but those citizens happen to be elected officials, a prosecutor, a judge, a court member. So, whether there's a violation of FOIA or not, it sure looks like that the spirit of FOIA was violated. Those are to me, those are discussions that should be held in the light of day with the media's eyes on them and any citizens that want to be there.
Well, yeah, and there's also a new state law, I believe, that's going into effect that requires all public meetings to be captured or recorded in some way as well.
That's right. That's exactly right. One of the really, thank goodness, we finally see a law that is supportive of FOIA and brings more light to government. A law that requires either audio or videotaping of public meetings. Long overdue.
So, here is the Gazette piece where you're asking the question, under what authority are these people meeting? And so, I think that's, and Joey, this stuff like this is happening kind of all across the state. And while this was an in-person meeting, I like that you are such a champion of the FOI law that you think these email chains need to be FOIA-able, or that they're conducting public meetings via email, making decisions, and then they go and they have their meeting in public, and it's all theater. It's all got a predetermined outcome. They know who's going to say what, but they've already decided in email. I think that's happening all over the state, all over the country, really.
No, I think there's no question that it is. I've seen it time after time again. We've currently got a case of...
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
So more on the solutions later, maybe closer to the top of the hour. The president, again, going to be making a statement, sometime around 10 o'clock today. I think that might be, he said 10 yesterday, so maybe that's more closer to 9 our time. We will talk about, you've got, the reason they're promoting Beto O'Rourke is because he's a former congressman, and that used to be in his district, okay? But we're up against a hard break. Back in just a moment. We'll get to some Arkansas news next.
One of the really, thank goodness, we finally see a law that is supportive of FOIA and brings more light to government. A law that requires either audio or videotaping of public meetings. Long overdue.
So, here is the Gazette piece where you're asking the question, under what authority are these people meeting? And so, I think that's, and Joey, this stuff like this is happening kind of all across the state. And while this was an in-person meeting, I like that you are such a champion of the FOI law that you think these email chains need to be FOIA-able, or that they're conducting public meetings via email, making decisions, and then they go and they have their meeting in public, and it's all theater. It's all got a predetermined outcome. They know who's going to say what, but they've already decided in email. I think that's happening all over the state, all over the country, really.
No, I think there's no question that it is. I've seen it time after time again. We've currently got a case up against the school board in near Heber Springs, where making those types of decisions through text messages. We've seen it happen in Mansfield, Ozark, Fort Smith. So it's happening all over the state. The Supreme Court recently blurred the lines with their ruling in the Wade case. But the bottom line is, in my opinion, if two folks off of a board are meeting to discuss business that is foreseeable to come before the public body, then that needs to be a meeting that everyone gets notice of. And because otherwise, as you said, we see the final result. All the discussion has already occurred, just like we see in the legislature. Bottom line, I mean, they go to the back rooms, discuss the legislation, and then all we see is a final vote with all the discussion done in the back rooms, and that's dangerous to our republic.
Yeah, it's kind of a daunting mountain when you think of it. I mean, how would we ever actually stop, just to kind of, pontificate here, how would we actually stop that from happening? Because, you have what the public sees is not what really going on. I mean, at some point, disagree with me if you want, Joey, but, at some point, they got to have the ability to talk with each other, obviously, outside of, let's say the General Assembly.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back, folks. Thanks so much for being with us. 870-275-9799. So the Democrat debates, obviously they were all last week, and Arkansas's own Tom Cotton. Senator Tom Cotton yesterday did an interview on New York AM 970, the Cats Roundtable. And this is what he said, quote, "We are going into a highly consequential election. The Democrats have truly lost their mind. If you watched those debates last week, they want to take away your health insurance. They want to abolish the death penalty. They want to decriminalize crossing our border illegally. They don't want to deport anyone other than serious violent felons. And they want to use your taxpayer dollars to provide them all health care. This is truly a debate and an election about whether America will be a socialist nation. I don't think Americans want to be a socialist nation, but it will be incumbent upon all Americans to get out and make their voice heard in this election." That's a quote. Again, Senator Tom Cotton. The Democrats have lost their mind. Did you ever think that the Democrats would go so far to the left? In a way, having a president like Donald Trump, who on policy is extremely conservative, the stuff he has instituted has been what a lot of people have been wanting to happen for a long time. And he's gotten praise, from conservative groups. Heritage Foundation, he had the best year. His first year was better than Reagan's, they said, and everything else. And I know not everybody agrees with everything he does. But the thing is, in a lot of ways, that success, seeing that policy be implemented, has driven the Democrats further to the left, which is odd if you think about it, but that's exactly what's happened. Who knew, you know? That goes against the conventional wisdom. The conventional wisdom is, okay, if you ever had somebody who was actually instituting conservatism, it would be too far, and the media would, would crucify you. Well, that certainly has all happened, but the Democrats aren't exactly embracing, moderatism. I mean, I know Joe Biden is considered the moderate, but I mean, did you hear what Joe Biden said about these tragic shootings over the weekend? He got the places wrong. Yeah, he got the states wrong where they happen in. I can't remember where he got the El Paso one wrong, but then he called my thoughts and prayers. Everybody in Michigan who suffered. Okay, all right. I mean, Joe Biden is anyway. Anyway, it's good that Arkansas's Tom Cotton is out there saying things like that. He's exactly right. They have lost their mind, but they believe that they are morally superior to us. They believe us meaning conservatives, anybody right of center. At this point, they're arguing that if you support the president at all, if you consider voting for him, if you are going to vote for him in 2020, that you're a racist. I mean, that's what people are saying out there. So, anyway, I personally, and I was totally wrong. I can't even believe I'm saying this, I mean, I know I've said it before, but, during the primary, I was not going to vote I didn't vote for the president in the primary. And I didn't think this would happen. Now, I voted for him against Hillary because that's like the easiest choice you could ever make in the world. But I didn't actually think that we would get what we have. But, I mean, look at I'm going to move on here. But I got to say, the reaction. This is like, you talk about draining the swamp. That's what President Trump is, it's what he campaigned on doing, one of the things. Washington and the elites and the media's and the world's reaction to Trump is it's like an immune system swinging into full gear, and all of these pieces line up to try to attack this virus. Now, I know virus has got a negative connotation, but it's this massive coordinated and yet everything they do, they fall into their own nets. It's fascinating. Okay, let's focus on State Representative Mickey Gates for a second. State Representative Mickey Gates was, if you remember this, he was arrested. When was he arrested? Was that back in, it was 2018, right? And when that happened, it was about taxes. He hadn't filed a state income tax return in a long, long time, okay? The state of Arkansas claimed that he owes $259,841. And this was all working itself out in court. And so recently, that has come to a head. And State Representative Mickey Gates, who, by the way, during this when this scandal broke in 2018, ran again and was elected by the people that represent him, even though everybody knew what he was going through. And so he pled no contest, and he struck a deal. I mean, this is a great deal that State Representative Mickey Gates got. There's no getting around that. This is a good deal for him. He pleads no contest which Mickey Gates says means, now, I did not plead guilty. I pled no contest. There's a difference. So I'm not going to resign, even though now we have Asa Hutchinson, the governor, saying that Gates should resign. Leslie Rutledge, Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin stands by his previous statement that Gates should resign. And now, recently, the Speaker of the House, Matthew Shepard, says Mickey Gates should resign. The terms of Gates' sentence, this deal that he struck with the government, includes 6 years of probation and an agreement to pay $74,789 in back taxes, interest, and penalties. Now, again, that is significantly less than the $259,841 the government initially charged Gates with. So that right there, I got to know what's up with that. I got to know why. So was the government wrong? I mean, if you go back and you look at the reports early on with this, and I know everybody was clamoring for, some people wanted to be consistent because of what was going on with the governor's nephew, Jeremy Hutchinson, and everything else. And they're like, well, this guy's got to resign because, other people are going to have to resign. Anyway, I don't know. But, if you go back and you at least what I heard was that State Representative Mickey Gates, before he was arrested and taken to jail for like 6 hours and, perp walked, because that's what happened, he was already in negotiations. He was already attempting, this is what I heard, he was already attempting to do something about this and working with them. And he claimed at the time that the government told him inaccurate information, that he was talking with them about what he needed to do, and he was doing the things that he was told to do, and the government essentially misled him. At least that was his claim. And all I'm saying is, I want to know why, like many of you out there, I want to know why the government initially said that you owe $259,000, but they're only going to make him pay $74,000. Now, this has to do with failing to file tax returns from 2013 to 2017. Quote, Mickey Gates telling the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, nobody has been found guilty of anything. There is not a verdict of anything because it's been postponed. Asked if he believed he had never broken the law through a failure to pay taxes, Gates said, quote, I'm not going to get into that. So now people are starting to clamor in the legislature about removing State Representative Mickey Gates, just removing him altogether. Gazette reporting in 1874, the Constitution states, the 1874 Constitution states that each chamber of the legislature may vote by a 2/3 majority to expel a member. The current House rules, however, do not include a process through which to begin that action. A top Democrat in the House, Minority Leader Fred Love, called Gates' decision against resigning, quote, unfortunate, but then also said he would like to review the records from Gates' criminal case before deciding whether expulsion would be appropriate. Meanwhile, again, Rutledge Griffin said that they have calls for him to step down. Let's see. Rutledge said this, quote, by his criminal plea of no contest, Representative Gates admitted that he did not properly pay taxes for years and owes the state money. Representative Gates has betrayed the public trust and should not remain in a position to be paid by taxpayers while he still owes taxpayers. In a text message, Tim Griffin said he continued to believe Gates should resign. I stand by that, and if he doesn't, he should be removed. Again, this is Arkansas Democrat Gazette. John Moritz with this piece. What do you guys think out there? I mean, it certainly doesn't look good at all. I mean, there's no question that this nobody would want to be in this situation. And what I would say here is, if I was State Representative Mickey Gates, and I believed that I had nothing wrong and I had a story to tell, well, now's the time to tell it. Like, now is the time. You have evidence, you have documents. Did the government mislead you? Did the government tell you something else? Do you have a theory for why this happened to you? Why you were singled out? Do you have a theory about that? Well, now's the time to talk about it. I mean, what else do you got to lose? I don't think the legislature's going to throw them out. I mean, I don't think they'll have to. They might have the 2/3 votes. I mean, all the Democrats. I mean, I don't know. Maybe. It's quite possible. But, I mean, what have you got to lose? I would say State Representative Mickey Gates, I'd love for him to come on the program. He can come right here on the program, and he can just be like, look, this is the truth. Now, maybe his lawyers, I don't know, maybe you're not supposed to do that. I don't know if that's good legal advice. But, I mean, I got to know why the government decided, why did the government say you owe us $250,000, but we just struck a deal with you saying, well, you actually only owe us $74,000. That's a big discrepancy. It's a very large discrepancy. And maybe that's part of some of the confusion. All I'm saying is, what if they were asking him to pay that initially, and he was like, whoa, I'm trying to make this right with you guys, but you guys are trying to make me pay way more than I actually owe. This is what I actually owe. I'm trying to straighten this out with you. I actually owe this. And then I'm just like, shooting from the hip here. And then maybe what if they just were like, oh, you think this is a negotiation? And then they sick the police on him and, they arrest him. And then they make it a big deal. And that's like, okay, now it's public. You're going to pay us our money, and now you've got to resign. And Mickey Gates says, well, no, I'm not going to resign. That's ridiculous. I don't know. I don't know if we have the full picture here. But I think State Representative Mickey Gates should provide that full picture. Right now, the ball is in his court. It's also with his voters, by the way. I mean, the fact is, this scandal broke, and he got reelected. So at least the people say that, I guess they don't care. So, I mean, there's something to be said about that as well. Anyway, we're going to take a break. Telephone number 870-275-9799 if you would like to contribute to the conversation. Let me know what you think. Sound off on Facebook. I'm going to look at your comments right now. Don't go anywhere. This is Conduit News. Back in just a moment.
To discuss business that is foreseeable to come before the public body, then that needs to be a meeting that everyone gets notice of. And because otherwise, as you said, we see the final result. All the discussion has already occurred, just like we see in the legislature. Bottom line, I mean, they go to the back rooms, discuss the legislation, and then all we see is a final vote with all the discussion done in the back rooms. And, that's dangerous to our republic.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a daunting mountain when you think of it. I mean, how would we ever actually stop, just to kind of, pontificate here, how would we actually stop that from happening? Because, you have what the public sees is not what really going on. I mean, at some point, and, disagree with me if you want, Joey, but I mean, at some point, they got to have the ability to talk with each other, obviously, outside of, let's say the General Assembly, or outside of this committee. I mean, can we really expect them not to talk about, this bill or this idea or that idea outside of the public's view? I mean, should they be wearing body cams the way police officers wear body cams?
Well, yes, we can absolutely expect them not to discuss public business. They leave if they want to discuss the weather or the hogs or something else, that's fine. But if two or more of a school board or a city councilor are discussing public business and making conclusions, then yes, we should be able to expect them not to do that until they're in an open meeting. In an open meeting, they can discuss it as much as they want to. It's this idea of efficiency versus transparency. And transparency, open government should win out every time. Otherwise, all decisions are going to be made in smoke-filled rooms, in closed to the public, and we can't allow that to occur.
Yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, hang on a second. You know, there's that C.S. Lewis quote from Screwtape Letters about the greatest evils are not done in those sordid dens that Dickens loved to paint. There it is. I mean, the greatest evil is not done in those sordid dens of evil that Dickens loved to paint, but it is conceived and ordered. It is conceived and ordered, moved, seconded, carried, and minuted in clear, carpeted, warmed, well-lighted offices by quiet men with white collars and cut fingernails and smooth-shaven cheeks who do not need to raise their voices. That's a pretty interesting quote, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. You know, as Justice Hart said, her
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, we're going to hear from... Coming up at 7:05, we're going to hear from a Cleveland County resident, Jackie Martin will be on the program. She's got something she wants to share with us about 911 services in that area. I think the rest of the state needs to know about. Also, at the bottom of the hour, coming up at 7:33, State Representative John Payton will be with us. He was the recipient of the Linda Collins Legislator of the Year Award at the Calvin Coolidge Awards, put on by Conduit for Commerce, the Promise is Kept Award. So we'll talk to him about that. And, we had one of his colleagues on, Josh Miller. We had him on Thursday, and he did a great job. He also received that award. So 2 recipients of the Linda Collins Legislator of the Year Award. The President of the United States is going to be speaking sometime today about what can be done, these terrible, terrible tragedies, the shooter in El Paso and Dayton, and these 2 shooters. And I'll tell you this, everybody is, I don't know about everybody, people on the right don't really do this. They only do this in response in the defense of the left trying to stand on the bodies, trying to stand on dead bodies to advance what they want to advance politically. And it's absolutely disgusting. And the question is, do you guys have a number? If we're going to talk Second Amendment, I mean, do you all have a number? Is there a number of dead bodies the left can stand on that will make you want to give up your Second Amendment rights, even to things like red flag laws? I mean, the president, go to this Breitbart article. Donald Trump promises action after weekend shootings in Ohio and Texas. Again, he'll be giving a speech, I think, around 9 Central. So when it talks about it is a mental health problem, how do you stop that? Is that going to be a red flag law? Here's Congressman Dan Crenshaw, who is a military veteran. Representative Dan Crenshaw, Republican Texas, is calling for red flag laws. The solutions aren't obvious, even if we pretend they are, but we must try. Let's start with the TAPS Act. Maybe also implement state red flag laws or gun violence restraining orders. Stop them before they can hurt someone. And then Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, El Paso shooting is sick and senseless. Time to do more than pray. Time to enact common sense legislation in Congress to empower states to deal with those who present a danger to themselves and others while respecting robust due process. I don't know how that is possible. I don't know how it is possible to have a red flag law where you assume someone's guilt, you drag them through a process when they haven't done anything. Let me come take your guns away. Because, because I'm I mean, it could be used for anything. I don't like this person. So, yeah, we could talk, well, we'll put strict penalties in if it's a false accusation. Really? You will? That still doesn't mean that you can, that might disincentivize someone, but that still doesn't mean that we're talking about a right that is non-negotiable. This is the inherent right of self-defense. The inherent right of self-preservation. It doesn't come from government. And I know people may not want to hear that because we live in a world where there's massive injustice. Massive injustice, and people want to try to do everything they can with their own mortal hands to try to stop it. But, there's not a sheet of paper. There's not a sheet of paper in the world. There's not a court order in the world, I don't think, that's going to stop somebody's heart from doing what he did, whether it's with a gun, a knife, or explosive, whatever. Everyone's emotions are very high right now. That's totally understandable. Totally understandable. But it is. I agree with Lindsey Graham that it's a sick and senseless shooting. But I do not agree that now we need to pursue these red flag laws. I do not agree. And I think many of you out there, you have to know about the pitfalls of people rushing to action. Because it's always about something else. Always about something else. Let's see here. Let's see, we have a few of your comments here on Facebook. Jackie, the Second Amendment is granted by God. Only God can take that away. What else do we have here? Yeah, well, some of your comments, I can't really read them, on the air. You know what I mean? Well, it's not necessarily like it's an FCC violation, but it's just a little, sometimes keep them coming, but sometimes a little crass. So, but let me know what you guys think. We're going to continue covering this. There's another huge story that was up at the Daily Caller, though, completely unrelated to everything we've talked about this hour. The Nixon sex cult is, I don't know if you guys know about this, but it ensnared the Smallville actress Allison Mack, who was basically running this thing with this Keith Raniere guy, and they would brand women and they would make them essentially slaves. There is an amazing story by Andrew Kerr and Brad Sylvester up at the Daily Caller, and it is absolutely shocking. If you have time, I suggest that you read it. This stuff goes very, very deep. I think it infiltrates a ton of different industries. There was a childhood education program that was created. They've got offices operating in France, Guatemala, and the UK still today. It was created by Keith Raniere, the convicted Nixon sex cult leader. So they were indoctrinating kids as young as 2 years old. No parents, from what I can tell. Sick. It was educational, though. Check that story out, because I think it won't be the last thing we hear about this. Back in just a moment, one more hour.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk, 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
It's Lewis quote from Screwtape Letters about the greatest evils are not done in those sordid dens that Dickens loved to paint. There it is. The greatest evil is not done in those sordid dens of evil that Dickens loved to paint, but it is conceived and ordered. It is conceived and ordered, moved, seconded, carried, and minuted in clear, carpeted, warmed, well-lighted offices by quiet men with white collars and cut fingernails and smooth-shaven cheeks who do not need to raise their voices. That's a pretty interesting quote, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. You know, as Justice Hart said in her dissent in this recent opinion, she said that today's majority opinion denies the electorate in Fort Smith insight into the performance of its elected officials and allows those public officials to make their decisions in secret. Secrecy is the poison to democracy.
Wow.
And that's what she based her dissent. And it's absolutely true. Secrecy is the poison to democracy.
It's interesting.
Conduct rewarded, conduct repeated. And if we allow two school board members or two city council members or two quorum court members to discuss the public business that is likely to become before that public body secretly, you know, whether it's on email, text message, or in a conversation in the back room of McDonald's, that's poison to democracy.
Yes.
We want to see those discussions in public.
Yeah, so I mean, it really is a question of ethics. It's a question of honor. It really, I don't think we really talked about this enough. I mean, the devil's advocate position would say, well, Joey, do you not want that? We're friends. Me and school board member, we're friends, and you just don't want us to talk about our day?
You talking about two school board members?
Yeah, two school board members. We're friends, and we want to be friends. And, of course, we're going to talk about this stuff.
Like I said, they can be friends. They can have discussions about things friends talk about, but not public business that's going to come before the public body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think what's going to happen, what's going to happen, Paul, is either the legislature is going to have to define what a meeting is, or I'm strongly considering bringing a ballot initiative, filing it shortly before the Arkansas Attorney General, getting it approved, and let the citizens vote on what a meeting is. And the definition that I like is when two public officials are discussing our public business that's likely to come before that public body, that's a meeting. And the public should get notice through at least the media, and also the people like myself in Fort Smith. And I would encourage all your listeners to contact their school boards and city government, JP, the Justice of the Peace, and tell those bodies that you want notice of all meetings that are occurring.
So, like, let me ask you that, because I'm not opposed to this, but I am just thinking of the process as right now. So how would that work? Like, if you've got a legislator who has an idea, you know, right now they have to go to the Bureau of Legislative Research. You know, they have to say, hey, this is what I want to do. Can you, you know, and there's probably an email chain that's created. There might be multiple legislators, you know, that are now kind of looped in via the email. Hey, this is what we're thinking of doing. So you think all of that should be public?
You know, I think that's a slightly different question. Right now we know that the FOIA meetings provision does not apply to legislators. So that's a slightly different question, but an interesting question, and one that, frankly, I see what happens in the legislature. You know, when Governor Rockefeller created and the legislature approved, the Democratic legislature, you know, Republican governor approved FOIA, they didn't include the legislative body, which to me was one of the things that weakened this law, because he would have never got it passed. So it applies to city council and, you know, city council, local government, government-appointed committees, and certainly...
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello. Thank you so much for being with us. We were just talking about all the people who are going to need therapy in some local communities when what I mean by that is, you get told over and over again that you have to have this tax or that tax in order to achieve progress. And there's a lot of people out there that think that their local community is great, fine, and they appreciate it and it's good. But it's not until somebody tries to get a new tax increase for this or that you realize that you actually live in a really, really terrible place. And it's not going to get any better unless you vote for a tax increase. Anyway, I digress. Maybe we'll have more on that later. Welcome to the program. It's hour number 2, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're going to spotlight now Cleburne County. I understand that there has been a disruption, or there's a coming disruption later this year in 911 services to the rural parts of, I think, Cleburne County it is. We have more on that right now. We have Cleburne County resident Jackie Martin, also listener of the program, fan of the show. Jackie, how are you?
I'm great, Paul. Thanks for having me on this morning.
Oh, absolutely. I'm glad that you got up with us. I know you're up with us most of the time because I see you on the Facebook feed. And you reached out to the show because you wanted to add, want to get some publicity about, about what? You just tell us the situation. Take it away.
Okay. Well, actually, I reached out to you after listening to Joey talk about FOIA because I'm working with him on this issue. Basically, what's happening is the law allows cities to competitively bid for ground ambulance service. And to give you a little background, we have a ground ambulance service out of Searcy, Arkansas, that's called North Star Ambulance. They've provided that service for the Heber Springs Fire District and surrounding fire districts for the last 19 years. And there's been no complaints about them or anything like that. There is another ambulance, it's an air ambulance service out of Batesville called Survival Flight. They have now put forth a proposal, Survival Flight has, to provide ground ambulance service, even though they're not licensed anywhere in the state to provide ground ambulance service. So in a vote on July the 25th, the Heber Springs City Council members voted for the Survival Flight proposal, full well knowing they weren't licensed. And so what that does to the surrounding fire districts is, as of November 15th, we will no longer have ground ambulance service because Heber Springs is key in any ground ambulance service serving Cleburne County so that it remains relatively profitable so that they can continue to operate, okay? So I started just dropping FOIAs everywhere when this thing started bubbling up because the city council didn't put forth a request for proposal, didn't put a list of requirements together, nothing. All of a sudden, this other company out of Batesville just pops up. They held an open meeting as required by law on July the 8th at noon on a work day where both North Star and Survival Flight put forth a presentation in the City Hall room, which only holds 38 people. There were a lot of public people that were interested in the issue that couldn't get into the room to see the presentation. So there's just a lot of cover-up behind-the-door meetings like Joey was describing last Friday.
Yep.
And so my FOIA has produced 2 meetings that were called or hosted by the county judge one on March the 13th, where 4 mayors of cities in Cleveland County were present, various EMS providers, so-called leaders of EMS providers, the Officer of Emergency Management, the New Heber Springs Fire Chief, and 1 Justice of the Peace. So I FOIA'd all the mayors, and of course the county judge, all the Justice of the Peace, all of the city council people, and out of the county judge's response, I got a sign-in sheet for both the March 13th meeting and the May 9th meeting, in which Survival Flight gave a presentation. And there was, at the May 9th meeting, not only the mayor of Heber Springs, but a city councilwoman was present as well. And, to make a quorum of any governing body, so the county judge and a JP plus city mayor of Heber Springs and a city councilwoman makes a quorum on any issue that could come up before the governing body that they might have a vote on. And amazingly enough, on June the 13th, there was a ordinance read for quorum court to provide the Survival Flight membership group plan to county employees. And, oh, yes, we're going to give it to all the JPs on quorum court as well, at a discounted rate for the county taxpayers to pay for it. And after a lot of discussion, there was a motion made by JP that they would just allow the county employees to continue to enroll in their membership plan at the discounted rate. Of course, I don't get one because I'm just a stupid county taxpayer, so I don't count. So that was kind of tabled. But the point of the fact of the matter is, county judge and the 2 JPs that were at the meetings that he hosted, were voting on this issue at the June meeting. So this is a clear violation of FOIA, and it states in the FOIA law, a quorum of the governing body need not be present for the meeting to be subject to the FOIA. If 2 members meet informally to discuss past or pending business, that meeting may be subject to the FOIA. So the county judge and the JPs are saying, well, it was just information gathering. Well, the AG opinions have something to say about that as well. The AG opinion pretty much says the final result reached by a public body, but rather is a spectrum including all phases of the process by which an end result is achieved, including deliberations, discussions, and information gathering, are subject to FOIA. So what I'm saying is, unless you're engaged in your local government, they're going to pull this stuff on you all the time.
Well,
so you better know your FOIA law and be able to slap FOIA on them. So I've been slapping FOIA on everybody, kind of like pollen during spring. That's what I've been doing.
Well, I think that's a good thing. And if it wasn't, for people like you, Jackie, there'd be a lot. If there's got to be opposition. We know the tendency of government, and it is not. People don't want to be transparent, but this has real world consequences. So what I'm not clear.
Yeah, people could die.
Right, exactly,
much.
Right. So what I'm not clear on though is the lack of ground ambulance service to Cleveland County. Okay, so they have now officially contracted with an air ambulance company that doesn't have a ground ambulance license. So does that mean no one is going to have an ambulance? I mean, and will Heber Springs still have one, a ground ambulance?
Oh yeah, it's an exclusive franchise contract only for Heber Springs city limits. No one outside of Heber Springs. This is what they said on July 25th. There was a meeting that was open to the public. They gave 30 minutes for public comment, three minutes per person. It was extremely obvious that the decision had already been made before that meeting. There were 2 city council people said, I don't care about county people. I'm only concerned with city people. Mm-hmm. And yet we were accused, the public was accused, accused of being divisive. I think that's called transference. I'm pretty sure that's what that's called. But, yeah, what Survival Flight is saying, oh, you know what, we're in the process of getting a license. Well, where's the responsibility of the so-called elected officials making sure every T is crossed and every I is dotted before they make a decision on anything of this magnitude? Do they not feel any responsibility to the public at large, regardless of where they live in the community?
What about the quorum court? What about the county judge? I mean, what are they doing now? I mean, do they know that in November, I mean, there may not be ambulance service for the folks in the county?
Oh yeah, they know, and they are discussing it. There's been 3 JPs who've been rather proactive and held a town hall meeting in one of the communities outside of Heber Springs that I attended, and both North Star and Survival Flight were allowed to present and to take questions from the audience there. And it was very obvious to me what was being said, and talked about what the Heber Springs City Council was doing, and the mayor and the new fire chief mainly, that this was already a done deal. They had already made up their minds. They didn't care what people had to say. They weren't holding town hall meetings around the community to get input from the community. There was not like I said, there was not a request for proposal. There wasn't a list of requirements to put together to send out to several ambulance providers, not just the current one and one new one. How about let's send it out to several? And when I FOIA'd, I requested that and was told there was no RFP done.
This is so.
And in fact,
go ahead.
In fact, on the July 25th meeting, one of the city council members made a motion to scrap the 2 proposals to start all over, do it the right way by putting out a request for a proposal with a list of their needs for their community. And it was a tie vote because there's 8 members on the city council, and the mayor would not vote to break the tie. So city councilman gave him an out, and he refused to take it.
This is strange to me, and the reason is because there are people, you know, whether I like it or not, there are people on the right and the left, obviously on the left, where, you know, when it comes to somebody's health care, and I'm going to put a contract with an ambulance service for the rural people that live in Cleveland County, I'm going to put that up right up there and with health care. That's what it is. You don't mess with that. You know what I mean? Like most people, most politicians, right? They're like, we're not going to take that away from somebody, right? Because number one, it's healthcare. It's a very, very hot button, you know, whether I agree with it or not, issue. And yet they've done that here. And so that's why this was such a red flag to me. I'm like, something's not adding up, because, you know, this is not supposed to be this is not normal, I guess. When a government is acting, you know, with some sort of predetermined outcome to take away health care, that you don't see that very often.
No, you don't. And especially, you see, I've been life-flighted before. My husband and I were in an ATV accident in 2008, and I was life-flighted. And my health care insurance paid $5,000 of the bill, and we got stuck with $20,000. That's why I'm never without a membership to an AirEvac program. And I just paid my AirEvac plan, and now I'm being told that Survival Flight will be the first one called, and if I don't buy a membership for them too, I won't be covered. And now the cost of an AirEvac plan is over $40,000.
Wow.
So, you know, people need to know that, and I've asked City Council, who's going to pay me back the $110 I'm out, because I paid $45 for my North Star membership. Who's going to pay me for that? No, there's no response. And I told them, I said, you know what? I used to do corporate benefits for 35 years, and whenever we had an open enrollment where we changed the vendor for a group plan, we made sure that it aligned with the next open enrollment, so nobody was out any money for participating in a plan. And that's the way it's supposed to be done. But now it's like, we don't care about county people. We're only concerned with city people, with no guarantee that the state is going to grant them a license for ground ambulance. Even the city is at risk of not having any ground ambulance service. And of course, Survival Flight is saying no one's going to be without an ambulance, blah, 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 blah. Well, the problem is that they're only going to purchase 4 ambulances, which they haven't purchased yet. They haven't hired the staff for. They haven't trained the staff for. But North Star has a backfill of 17 ambulances. So, like, let's say there's 3 ambulances in Heber Springs, and we got a big hole, 40,000-acre hole in our county that divides the county, and that's Greers Ferry Lake. So, just last week, there were all the ambulances that are in Heber Springs were on call. The 4th call came in. Immediately, there was an ambulance on its way from Searcy when the 4th ambulance that's in Heber Springs was put into play. Not shortly after that one, the next ambulance call came in for Cleveland County because summer's really busy with all the tourists here, for a 5th ambulance, and it immediately was already on the way, a 6th ambulance on the way to Cleveland County to make sure we were covered. Survival Flight doesn't have that.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this, Jackie. Cleveland County, I've just got some people sounding off here. Is it one of those areas? I mean, because of the lake and because of the mountains and everything. I mean, is ground ambulance like is an air evac kind of the only viable option? Or I mean, obviously you're saying there's ground service now, right?
Yeah, there's ground service now. I mean, but Heber Springs is also a retirement area. So the average age of our citizens in Cleveland County is over 65.
Mm-hmm.
So your stroke, heart attack, whatever. Our hospital here is a triage center. Everybody is sent down to Little Rock via air evac.
Yeah.
So it's not just boating accidents or they fall off Sugarloaf Mountain or we had a drowning the other day in Greers Ferry Lake, or things like that happen.
Mm-hmm.
There's serious health issues that happen that require air evac. But there's a difference in ground ambulance, too. There's a basic life support, which just, triages the person until they can get a paramedic there or get them to a hospital. And there's also an advanced life support, which is the paramedic or the EMT personnel. And that's what North Star provides and has been providing for the last 19 years. Now, Survival Flight will provide EMT ambulances for the 4 ambulances that they are going to service. But what happens if all 4 ambulances are in service and then you get a 5th call? Their response is to provide a helicopter at over $40,000 to the cost.
All right, I got last question, Jackie, as we got to go. So, do you think though that that there will be some plan moving forward? Where they'll fix
thanks
this?
For the question.
Yeah.
Well, we have a petition circulating because you have the right to referendum any city council vote to overturn it. So we need 350 signatures on our petition to get this vote overturned. That stops everything. Then the election will be November the 12th, and if the citizens vote to overturn the vote of the city council, then they have to start all over again, which then they would have to extend North Star's contract or franchise. So that's what we're working on right now. So if you're listening from Heber Springs, please, if you're approached with a petition, please sign the petition so we can overturn this vote.
All right.
And get some sanity back in this situation.
All right, Jackie, we appreciate it. Thanks so much for giving us that update, and thank you for filing those FOIA requests and attempting to hold people accountable. They do. It's a great law. We appreciate it, Jackie. Speaking of FOIA, which is like the biggest achievement of the Rockefeller era, Governor Rockefeller era, we are going to be talking with Senator Mark Johnson, who got a building renamed after Winthrop Rockefeller tomorrow on the program. State Representative John Payton coming up at the bottom of this hour. But I am just thinking of the process as right now. So how would that work? Like if you've got a legislator who has an idea, right now they have to go to the Bureau of Legislative Research. They have to say, hey, this is what I want to do. Can you, and there's probably an email chain that's created. There might be multiple legislators, that are now kind of looped in via the email. Hey, this is what we're thinking of doing. So you think all of that should be public?
I think that's a slightly different question. Right now, we know that the FOIA meetings provision does not apply to legislators. So that's a slightly different question, but an interesting question, and one that, frankly, I see what happens in the legislature. When Governor Rockefeller created and the legislature approved, the Democratic legislature, Republican governor approved FOIA, they didn't include the legislative body, which to me was one of the things that weakened this law, because he would have never got it passed. So it applies to city council and, city council, local government, government-appointed committees, and certainly that's the way our government should be run, that two of those people shouldn't be able to make their decision, or two or three or four, and then have a sham meeting.
Yeah.
Which is what's happening throughout this state.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court did make it abundantly clear that these secret meetings can occur by email. All of them pretty much agreed on that point. At least 6 out of 7 agreed on that point. One kind of said that the legislature has not said that, but Paul, we need it defined what a meeting is, and I'd like to see it come through the people and enshrined in our Constitution.
Yeah.
We see all these ballot initiatives and all this stuff they're trying to put in our Constitution, but to me, it would be an important provision to put in our Constitution that public officials, in essence, must do their business publicly.
Yeah.
Where you and I and all the citizens can watch if they want to, and the media gets notice of it so they can report on it.
I can't argue with that, and my devil's advocate arguments are typical. That's what you're going to hear. It's like people want to protect government. They want to protect the process of government, and we never have. You know what I mean? They're going to argue, like with the ethics provisions, like, well, we need to make sure we don't go too far, and attorneys are, you're going to inhibit attorneys from being able to be legislators. We need to make sure we don't go too far with transparency. And it's like, for once, could we just go too far when it comes to disclosure, or go too far and just see what happens? Just see what comes of it. You know what I mean? I mean, we have all these concerns.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. 870-275-9799. You can call or text that number over here on the Facebook page, facebook.com/Conduit News. Facebook.com/Conduit News, if you want to check that out. We went long on that last segment. My apologies. We'll have State Representative John Payton back with us next. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Linda Collins Legislator of the Year Award. Back in just a moment.
And in our Constitution,
yeah,
we see all these ballot initiatives and all this stuff they're trying to put in our Constitution. But to me, it would be an important provision to put in our Constitution that public officials, in essence, must do their business publicly.
Yeah.
Where you and I and all the citizens can watch if they want to, and the media gets notice of it so they can report on it.
You know, I can't argue with that, and you know, my devil's advocate arguments are you know, typical. That's what you're going to hear. It's like people want to protect government. They want to protect the process of government, and you know, we never have. You know what I mean? They're going to argue, like with the ethics provisions, like, well, we need to make sure we don't go too far, and attorneys are, you know, you're going to inhibit attorneys from being able to be legislators. We need to make
Fix it safe with Stadium Auto Body. Our safety system health check scans your vehicle's electronic safety systems prior to and after repairs to verify all are working properly and repaired to manufacturer's specifications. With most safety sensors mounted on the outside of your vehicle, even a minor fender bender can cause major safety issues. With your most precious cargo in tow, you don't want to think everything is okay. You want to know. Fix it safe with Stadium Auto Body.
Hey, it's Brandon Baxter for Birch & Co. Real Estate, and if you want to sell your home, call Eric Birch and his team at Birch & Co. Real Estate. That's exactly what Paula from Jonesboro did. She was moving out of town and needed to sell her home right away. So she picked up the phone, she called Eric Birch and the team at Birch & Co., and their marketing and accelerated demand program brought immediate results for Paula. And the house sold in just 3 days for over list price. And those are the kind of results you want when you're selling your home. Now, you got to find that sweet spot when you're listing your home, not too high where it doesn't sell, or too low where you leave money on the table. That's why you got to pick up the phone and call Eric Birch and his team at Birch & Co. Real Estate. They even have a guarantee that they can sell your home in just 29 days. And Eric takes the drama out of home selling. If there is drama, they'll let you out of that contract free and clear. Call the only agent I would call if I needed to sell my home. Call Eric Birch.
7 of them show up at McDonald's. 3 of them discuss shutting down the Civil Service Commission, make a decision. Is that not a public meeting? I mean, that makes no sense. There is no way that the Supreme Court or anybody else is going to say if 7 Fort Smith City Council members show up at the McDonald's one morning, they agree to show up at the McDonald's, 3 of them discuss shutting down the Civil Service Commission, and then they have a public meeting later. Do you think somebody's not going to scratch their heads and say that that's a public meeting that the media should have received notice?
That's a good point.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, so the last day, we'll have a new slogan, new board tomorrow on the program. But for the time being, it still says Coolidge rules, Wilson drools, because it means the truth. Oh man, Joe just loves to crack jokes in there. So, in that spirit, I guess a week ago on Friday, it was the Calvin Coolidge Awards put on by Conduit for Commerce. We told you about them. There's a great write-up about it up at conduitnews.com. You can check it out. Calvin Coolidge lives at CFC Awards Banquet is the headline. But there's a new award given. We talked to State Representative Josh Miller. We talked to him last week about his receiving of the Linda Collins Legislator of the Year Award. There was also one other person that got the award as well, State Representative John Payton, and he joins us now via phone. John, how are you this morning?
Doing great. Good morning, Paul. Appreciate you doing what you do.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, sir. So I just want to talk a little bit about not just the Linda Collins Award. We'll get to that here in a minute, but all of the awards that you got. You got a lot, okay? You got the 2019 Conduit for Commerce Calvin Coolidge Arkansas Hero Award. Then you also were recognized because you've gotten, been on that list every year you've served. And so, I mean, you just kind of talk a little bit about those two awards.
Well, it's nice, sometimes voting conservative doesn't put you in a very popular clique. And so I really appreciate Conduit and what they do. And, it's nice to have a little recognition from somewhere. But, when I'm reading legislation and deciding how I'm going to vote on it and things like that, I don't know what they're going to be grading or what's going to be on the list. But obviously, if you have conservative principles, in the end, it's going to line up with Conduit, you know. And so I'm proud that I've been on their list or at the top of their list every term and every session, and it was great. It was just great to be there and for them to recognize what we do.
Well, you know, and like you said, you know, the votes speak for themselves. You know, it's just the fact that, you know, from an economic freedom standpoint, you know, John, you just tend to vote very much like that economic freedom filter. If it grows government, if it increases dependency on government, if it spends money we don't have, it's a really good defense mechanism about whether or not you're going to support a piece of legislation. Now, you also got another Coolidge Award because of your car tax bill. What can you tell us about that, and where might that go? Because it didn't get out of committee on the Senate side, but where might it go maybe the next session?
Well, it's of course one of the bills that's closest to my heart. I think it's important for struggling families that we give them some tax relief when they purchase a used automobile that taxes has already been collected, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 times or more every time it sells. But it came under their classification in these awards as a freedom bill, and you know, I'm all for reducing government, getting them out of our pocket, getting them out of our business as much as possible, and going back to the independent freedom that our founders envisioned whenever they, you know, built this country. And so I'm still 110% intending to file that bill, get it through. But I was visiting with Senator Garner, and I don't know, I guess it's about a month ago. And so we decided that it's going to be best if he files it in the Senate and gets it through the Senate first. You know, we had 87 co-sponsors in the House.
Yep.
And we got it through the House with only 1 no vote. And then it gets to the Senate, and because the governor and the head of the Senate and the chair of the Revenue and Tax Committee over there opposed it, they were able to stop it. And I had enough votes in that committee committed to vote for it and get it passed. I just couldn't get them to the meeting. And so Senator Garner's going to carry the bill and file it on the Senate side and get it through the Senate first. He's already started, you know, publicizing it and working on it. And,
I saw that, and it's going to be a bigger exemption too than what you had initially put in the bill, right?
That's our intention. I filed it for $7,500 last time. This time it's $10,000.
So the wall just got 10 feet higher. That's what you're telling me.
Right. Well, here's the thing. You know, it had a net revenue hit of about $12 million when I filed it, and they squealed like a pig under the gate and said there wasn't enough money in the budget. But since then, we've had a $295 million surplus. So I think that justifies going up to $10,000 for sure.
Absolutely, it does. We're talking with State Representative John Payton. He was at the Calvin Coolidge Awards, I guess, over a week ago now. And so then you also were given this award, the Linda Collins Legislator of the Year Award, Promises Kept. What was it like receiving an award like that, sir?
Well, of course, you know, my district bordered what Linda Collins Smith's district was, and you know, she was from the Batesville area, and I live 30 miles from Batesville, and so we were pretty close. And after I got elected in my first term, I met Linda and found out who she was, and she was a firebrand and full of energy and working hard and ready to elect more conservatives. And so she organized an event along with Conduit where we would, you know, go across the northeast tier counties and campaign for some candidates in your area.
Yeah, I remember that.
We all met in Batesville. We had an event in Batesville with Linda.
Yep.
And then came with us, and we all traveled over to Jonesboro and Fairfield there's about a half a dozen conservatives that we helped get elected. And so from the first, from that event on, I've been very close to Linda. It's just heartbreaking what happened, but she definitely embodied the idea of promises kept. A lot of people like to bring up the fact that she had been a Democrat for years, or the first term she ran as a Democrat, and she switched parties. But I'll tell you this: when she switched parties, she totally represented our platform, the Republican platform, and conservative ideals, and she kept those promises. I mean, when she switched parties, she kept the promises. She was as pro-life as anybody I ever met. Yeah. And for her life to have been dubbed out the way it was, it's just tragic. Yeah. So it really was great to get an award with her name on it. And they definitely, calling that award the promises kept. I mean, that's what she was.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, absolutely. Well, John, I really appreciate you coming on, sir, spending some time with us this morning. It's always great to talk to you, always great to have you on, and keep up the great work. And I look forward to I know everybody looks forward to having that used car tax bill put in there. And, maybe eventually we won't even tax a used vehicle at all on sales tax because it's already been paid.
Yeah, wouldn't that be something? But I'll tell you, it's never too early to start putting pressure on the governor's office and whoever your elected reps are, senators and representatives, and tell them you want that car tax bill passed. So
all right.
We appreciate all the help we can get.
All right. State Representative John Payton, sir, I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Oh, see you later.
All righty. Folks, again, if you want a more recap, go look at those photos, again, up at conduitnews.com about the Calvin Coolidge Awards legislators honored. One of those also was Senator Trent Gardner that he was mentioning. Okay, so check this out. This is developing news. I'm going to put an Arkansas twist on it. China has just thrown its next punch in the trade war. China isn't backing down in its trade war with the United States. Beijing responded to President Trump's threat to place new tariffs on Chinese goods by letting its currency, the yuan, sink to its weakest level in over a decade and ordering state-owned companies to reportedly halt their purchases of U.S. agricultural products. This is tit for tat. We'll see who blinks first. But let me just tell you, Arkansas's economic development plan with Chinese entities directly contradicts the vice president, from what I can tell, directly in terms of what China is up to. I want you to listen to Vice President Mike Pence from last year, the Hudson Institute. It's a montage that also, puts side by side what the governor of Arkansas says versus what, the country is doing foreign policy-wise. Listen to this.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown 9-fold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong Province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Rui, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So, Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Li to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong Province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong Province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong Province. I met with Chairman Li. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas,
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Li and I met yesterday. Chairman Li indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. You know, I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. You know, we need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them, and they're going to help you. Guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
A whole approach. We got to take a break. We'll be back here in just a moment with your meme of the day. But you know, it's interesting being more. I mean, I would just at least like equal concern. Can we have equal concern for Russia? The same amount of concern and fear we have for Russia, can we also have it for China? Please. Back in a minute.
And in our Constitution.
Yeah.
You know, we see all these ballot initiatives and all this stuff they're trying to put in our Constitution. But to me, it would be an important provision to put in our Constitution that public officials, in essence, must do their business publicly.
Yeah.
Where you and I and all the citizens can watch if they want to, and the media gets notice of it so they can report on it.
You know, I can't argue with that, and you know, my devil's advocate arguments are you know, typical. That's what you're going to hear. It's like people want to protect government. They want to protect the process of government. And, we never have, you know what I mean? They're going to argue, like with the ethics provisions, like, well, we need to make sure we don't go too far. And attorneys are, you're going to inhibit attorneys from being able to be legislators. We need to make sure we don't go too far with transparency. And it's like, for once, could we just go too far when it comes to disclosure, or go too far and just see what happens? Just see what comes of it. You know what I mean? I mean, we have all these concerns for the status quo, really, is what we're talking about. Like, yeah, this is a problem that needs to be reformed, but we don't want to reform it too much. And I'm just ready to reform it too much. Like, let's make a mistake. We got plenty of mistakes the way things are. Why not make a mistake in trying to correct it with too much transparency? I think that would yield way better results for the people than, say, what we've got now with all this corruption.
Yeah, I mean, we need the light of day on government. That's the bottom line. And this recent Supreme Court decision in the Wade case that I was involved in, it basically said that they have 7 board members on an email chain. 3 of them engage in discussion of public business, getting rid of the Civil Service Commission, make decisions. So if they and the Supreme Court said that was okay. What if 7 of them show up at McDonald's, 3 of them discuss shutting down the Civil Service Commission, make a decision? Is that not a public meeting? I mean, that makes no sense. There is no way that the Supreme Court or anybody else is going to say, if 7 Fort Smith City Council members show up at the McDonald's one morning, they agree to show up at the McDonald's, 3 of them discuss shutting down the Civil Service Commission, and then they have a public meeting later. Do you think somebody's not going to scratch their heads and say that that's a public meeting that the media should have received notice?
That's a good point.
I think yes, everyone would agree with that.
Fort Smith attorney Joey McCutcheon. Joey, thank you for your efforts. We really appreciate it.
We're going to keep after him, Paul.
All right.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Look for a ballot initiative or legislative action.
I'm excited about that.
What constitutes a meeting?
All righty. Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Joey.
Thank you, Paul.
Folks.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, so you're going to hear a lot about gun control, and, the left, they're going to continue to, try to exploit this. And they were very interested into who this guy was affiliated with politically, but probably won't be so much now that we're finding out more about the guys, the 2 men. So what's up next? Oh, yeah, your meme of the day, because we're running out of time here. Your meme of the day, courtesy of true_conservative_media on Instagram. It's a photo of a lovely, cuddly, cute polar bear. Headline, woke polar bear apologizes for being white. You say that's kind of insensitive for today. But have you heard Jake Tapper talk about white terrorism? White terrorism. Beto O'Rourke, others, white terrorism is a real threat. Wow, I mean, it's very interesting times that we live in. They have to quantify it with race, right? They're the media. A shooting's happened. They have to qualify it with race, but they're the news priests. But if this was somebody who subscribed to Islam, they wouldn't even mention anything specific about the person. It'd be some people did something, like Ilhan Omar said. We'll post this up at the Twitter and Facebook page. Go to conduitnews.com for more.